You're listening to Murder Not Murdering with Aaron,
and Autumn,
a true crime podcast about murder and murdering.
but we are not murderers.
First day on the job, 9 o'clock Monday morning. They put me in the barber shop with 9 inmates. And when the prison barber proceeded to cut his first customer's hair, next thing I know, the customer getting his hair cut jumped out of the chair. And the barber went after him with a pair of 7-inch barber shears. And he got him in the throat, the heart, the lung, and I ended up on top of both of them. And he kept stabbing him with the shears. This was my first introduction to Alcatraz. My first day, my first assignment, my first hour. George DiVincenzi, former prison guard, Alcatraz. Welcome, everyone, to our special Alcatraz episode. Also, a special welcome back to Autumn, who has been out sick.
I'm back.
I'm so glad you're feeling better.
Yes, me too. It was very long recovery.
For real, though. And the worst part is you lost your voice, because I feel like if you were sick and you didn't lose your voice, we could have gotten through it.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I sent some voice recordings to Aaron.
Oh, yeah.
It was like non-existent.
No, it kind of sounded like you'd smoked a pack a day since, 1962.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was the Marlboro man.
You were like a PSA that they would put out in the 90s for why you don't smoke.
Yes. Or like the people with the hole in their neck from smoking. That was me.
Exactly. Thank you to our listeners for being understanding and listening to my little mini-sode.
Which I got a lot of good feedback on our Instagram of your mini-sode. Everyone thought it was really cute.
That's good. Something short and sweet to hold everybody over until we got to do a big episode.
It was funny because I knew that episode, like not the episode, I knew the story. And so while you were telling it, I was like, oh, shoot, I know this one.
I know, the Mary Morrises.
It was so good, though.
It was really fun. You know how I came across it as I was watching like reruns of Unsolved Mysteries on YouTube.
That's probably how I know the story.
And it's from like 2000 or something.
That's 1,000,000% how I know the story.
Yeah. Okay. So this is we've been kind of planning this for a while now, that we were going to do an episode on Alcatraz. And a big part of it is we came up with the idea of the name for the podcast and everything on our trip to San Francisco when we visited Alcatraz together.
Which is also the trip when Aaron was telling everybody that I loved murder.
Yeah. You like murdering.
Yes. And I would be like, Aaron, you got to tell them true crime.
Whatever. It's just a true story.
But we would get into Ubers and she'd be like, she loves murder. I'm like, this is really uncomfortable.
Well, that's what made it so much funnier, though.
To you.
I will say, though, when we did visit Alcatraz, it was really eerie.
Oh, it was so eerie. And
it's super windy and cold and awful. You can see why it was so bad.
But I loved it.
Oh, yeah. No, it was great.
I wouldn't want to live there.
In a cell? No. Obviously not.
No. But I loved visiting.
Yeah. You can see why it was so treacherous or why people couldn't escape it, because it was like, it is very windy. It is definitely like rough waters getting there.
Yes.
And it's cold. It's really,
really cold.
Very different than even just in San Francisco, just right across the water there. So it's kind of crazy. But we had a really good time. It was definitely had some eerie spots, especially when we went to that like downstairs early prison area, because it was used like as there was like a dungeon area before. It has a very long history before it became a federal prison.
Yeah, it was super, super interesting. If you like history, you need to go there.
Absolutely. Plus, then the other thing that was interesting too is there was a Native American occupation that took place there. So it was cool because they also had a portion of the museum that was dedicated to that time. So if you do go, it's really interesting. That happened in like the late 60s, early 70s. And that's, they just took over the island. It's really interesting after the prison closed, of course. And there's so many famous people that were housed at Alcatraz. Al Capone,
the Birdman.
Yeah, the Birdman of Alcatraz. There's like so many people that were famous. We're not focusing on the famous people. Sorry. So you're just gonna get what you get. You deal with it.
Wow, she has gotten very bossy since she's done her own solo podcast.
Listen, I basically have my own podcast now. You could be here or not.
I guess I'm just a guest.
I mean, have you met my friend Cabernet? She's great.
Oh, man.
I am drinking water tonight, by the way.
Oh, I actually wouldn't have been able to tell.
Yeah, you would. I get a lot more chatty and a little bit like goofy. Anyway. So before I get started into my case, I'm going to do a quick overview for those of you that aren't familiar with some of the facts and the layout of Alcatraz, because it pertains to my case in particular on the way that it's set up there. The federal prison on Alcatraz Island in the chilly waters off of San Francisco Bay housed some of America's most difficult and dangerous felons during its years of operation from 1934 to 1963. It was a maximum security prison. The inmates called it Alcatraz because it was very cold and damp, and it was known to break even the most hardened of criminals. The Federal Bureau of Prisons viewed Alcatraz as the prison system's prison, a place where the most disruptive inmates could be sent to live under sparse conditions with very few privileges in order to follow the rules. Alcatraz was made up of 4 cell blocks labeled A through D. Each cell in block B and C were 5 foot by 9 foot. Cells at Alcatraz had a small sink with a cold running water, a small sleeping cot, and a toilet. Most men could extend their arms and touch each wall within their cell. Block A was primarily used as holding cells and storage. In the D block, inmates were confined to their cells 24 hours a day, with the exception of 1 visit per week to the recreational yard and 1 hour shower once a week. These visits were always alone. It was solitary confinement in the D block, and it was known as the hole. The longest prisoner kept in the D block was 19 days. The guards could not keep them in longer, but if they acted up the moment they left, they could just turn them back around, put them back in, and start another 19 days. Just kind of fucked up. So that's a quick overview of Alcatraz. And we did visit the D block, and we'll post pictures from our actual trip on our Instagram page. So keep an eye out for that, as well as the usual pictures of our cases.
Yeah, it was actually really cool to go in there and see everything, because I could see how someone would absolutely lose their mind in solitary confinement.
It's absolutely awful, just horrible. Okay, I'm going to get started. My story is the infamous Battle of Alcatraz. Inmate number AZ415 was bank robber Bernard Paul Coy, a World War II veteran born into poverty and the target of his father's beatings, which only added fuel to his violent tendencies. After getting in many altercations and attacking another inmate with a razor blade stuck to a toothbrush, prison officials sent him to Alcatraz. Coy told the judge that there is no prison that would be able to hold him.
Challenge accepted.
Exactly. Send him to the rock. Only 28 days into his 25-year sentence, he arrived at Alcatraz, where it was believed that a harsher environment might sort him out. He routinely fought with other inmates, including an especially violent fight where he was stabbed and spent several days in the infirmary. Did he learn any lessons? Absolutely not.
Of course not.
In year 2 of being at Alcatraz, Coy attempted to escape by cutting a hole through a window shield. His plan was thwarted. And he was sent to the strip cell in D block, the hole. The D block cells were for problematic prisoners. Known as the special treatment unit, the hole had 5 cells known as dark cells. They were called dark cells because each cell had 2 doors, an inner door that had tool resistant steel bars with a slot for food, and an outer door that was solid with a shuttered glass panel a guard could look in to check on the well-being of the inmate. Each dark cell came equipped with a light fixture controlled by the guards, not by the inmate. So these people were left in the dark for the majority of the day.
That would be so disorienting.
Oh, yeah. Fucks with you bad. The first 5 of these special treatment dark units came furnished with sinks and a mattress given to the inmate only at night, then taken out in the morning. And they had 1 toilet. Inmates were kept in these cells, like I said, for 24 hours, except for once a week for showering or 1 hour alone in the yard. So they would have no interaction with anyone else. They couldn't speak to anybody else. They had to stay silent. Now, the 6th cell, the strip cell, is where Coy went. He had 1 low wattage light bulb. He was stripped completely naked with nothing but a hole in the floor for a toilet. And he would lay on metal and concrete. No blankets, no bed. The door was closed at all times with no light, ever. The prisoners in the D block were only given bread and water, and the sensory deprivation usually had a profound effect on prisoners. In the case of Bernie Coy, it seemed to have worked. For the next 7 years, he was known as an easygoing and well-liked inmate. He became,
wow.
I know, for 7 years though, he became the library orderly. And because he was so well trusted, they allowed him to have unsupervised visits to deliver books in the D block where you're not supposed to talk to anybody, which is kind of crazy that they allowed him to do that.
Mm-hmm.
He was also an artist and regularly painted. He even had his paintings taken by the warden to an art show in Washington, D.C. He read constantly and became noticeably very physically fit. One thing, unbeknownst to everyone around, is that he was more determined at this point to break out of Alcatraz. He had been patient and learned all the ins and outs of the guards' schedules, made relationships with trusted inmates, and got everything planned out, which is 7 years.
That's a long time.
It is. But I mean, I feel like to break out of there, you had to have been like, it would take a lot. Plus, he had to formulate enough people that he could trust. And it's filled with fucking prisoners that probably aren't very trustworthy, you know? So I'm sure all of that took a long time. At 1 p.m. on May 2nd, 1946, Coy started his janitorial duties. At this point, the majority of people were working at work or outside, so the guards were at an all-time low in the vicinity. Officer Bert Birch was working in the gun gallery, which went around the entire top of the prison. So you would see one person walking up there with a gun, and it was very secured. Officer William Miller was under the gallery and sat at a desk. Coy left his spot that he was sweeping, went out of sight, and rushed to the library. He was heard by inmate AZ 462, Sam Shockley, who was well aware of what was planned. He was serving a life sentence for bank robbery and kidnapping. He was also said to have the mental development of a child 8 to 10 years old, and he had very vivid hallucinations. He got frightened at night by the voices that he heard, and he also thought food was poisoning him to make him lose his mind, and he had regular outbursts. He was a very difficult prisoner, and that's why he was sent to Alcatraz. However, it did not reform him at all. He was heard screaming and throwing things in his cell, and several times he ripped out all the plumbing fixtures to his toilet and sink. He spent most of his time in solitary and often in the strip cell. Just so fucking sad because this person really needed mental health help.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, 1946, they weren't exactly up on all of this. And
No, it wasn't common.
essentially, he was tortured, in my opinion. Anyway, when he heard Coy's tapping on the library door, he knew exactly what to do. He erupted into a pre planned rage, throwing things in his cell and screaming to mimic his previous outbursts. Officer Cecil Corwin went to investigate with Officer Birch watching from the gallery. Coy kept sweeping the floor, pretending to be oblivious to what was going on. Alcatraz inmate AZ 645 was convicted armed robber and kidnapper Marvin Hubbard. He was sent to Alcatraz for instigating riots. Fun guy. He was in the kitchen and he was trying to work slower to await Coy's signal. He slipped a large butcher knife up his sleeve with the handle in his hand. He asked Officer Joseph Burdett if he could go and get some air. The officer agreed. At this time, that means Officer Miller is the only guard in the main cell area. Officer Miller opened the gate to let Hubbard into the main cell house. Coy set his broom down, crept on the floor towards Officer Miller as he was patting down Hubbard. Coy punched Miller in the back of the head, then held his arms behind his back as Hubbard attacked him with violent punches.
Oh my God.
Then, as Miller was slumped over, unconscious and bleeding, Coy searched his body and stole a large ring of keys. Coy knew how to use the controls to open the cell doors after watching for years. He did just that in the C block. Then he stripped Miller and put him in the cell tied up. Coy ran back to the control box and opened 3 more cells. He let out inmate AZ 548, a bank robber known as Joseph Kretzer, who while at McNeil Island stole a truck and then he escaped. He also was caught with another inmate, and he attacked the guards and got a life sentence and was sent to Alcatraz.
Oh, wow.
Next out was inmate AZ 729, Miran Thompson. He had a long criminal history and he had killed a police officer. He was also caught trying to escape the Mexican border. Alcatraz was the best option for him as he had 8 previous prison escapes on his record.
8?
8.
Wow.
Different prisons. Lastly was inmate AZ 714, Clarence Carnes, Alcatraz's youngest inmate. He was sentenced to life in prison at the age of 16 for a murder of a garage attendant during an attempted holdup.
Holy crap.
He had numerous previous escapes in different prisons and was sent to Alcatraz. You can see why it was the prisoner's prison, and they sent all of the people that they just couldn't handle in other prisons. Aided by accomplice Kretzer, Coy smeared axle grease all over his chest, head, and extremities and started climbing the West Gun Gallery. Climbing hand over hand, he scaled to the barred cage until he reached the top. Clenched in Coy's teeth was a small cloth bag containing a crudely made bar spreading device that he had fashioned from toilet fixtures in one of the prison's workshops. Coy set the device between 2 bars, which were 5 inches apart. Using a small wrench, he was able to use enough force to spread the bars and create an opening nearly 10 inches wide. It is believed that he had been starving himself in order to fit through the bars.
Oh my God.
I know. Can you imagine 10 inches? That's not very wide, especially like hips. And I mean, it's not like he had shapely hips, but you know what I mean? Like it's your bones only.
Yeah, that's like so really big. Small.
With Kretzer watching his progress from below, Coy painfully squeezed his body through the opening and made his entrance into the West Gun Gallery, where he waited in ambush. His accomplices lured the officer out. As the unsuspecting Officer Birch passed through the doorway, Coy forcefully hurled a steel door forward, throwing the officer off balance. He brutally clubbed him, forcing him to the floor. Then he strangled him into unconsciousness with his own necktie. He bound the officer Birch. Then Coy took his Springfield rifle in the gallery and lowered an M1911 pistol, keys, a number of clubs, and gas grenades to his accomplices below. Continuing along the gun gallery, Coy entered the D block, which is the hole. It was separated by the main cell house by a concrete wall. There, he used the rifle to force Cecil Corwin to open the door to the main cell house and let the others in. They were joined by a dozen convicts, including Sam Shockley, Mirren Thompson. Shockley and Thompson joined Coy, Carnes, Hubbard, and Kretzer in the main cell house. The other prisoners just returned to their cells. They don't want any of it. They now had Officer Miller, Birch, and Corwin locked in, bound in a cell on the C block. The convicts were now fully armed and were able to capture a total of 9 unarmed guards and lock them into cells. The escapees needed to secure the key to the yard door to the prison. They had planned on making their way to the island's dock for the prison launch. The boat docked daily between 2:10 and 2:30 p.m. The plan was to use the hostage officers as cover as the prisoners made their way to the dock, then to San Francisco and freedom.
That is savage.
But I know, using the human beings as their plot.
Yes.
But their escape plan soon began to crumble as they were unable to locate the key that would unlock the door leading to the recreational yard. The key had been concealed by Officer Miller. Plot twist. He had surrendered all of his keys to the convicts except one most critical one. Bravely, Officer Miller had been able to quietly hide the key in the toilet of the cell where he and the other correctional officers were being held hostage.
Oh, wow.
When the breakout was discovered, they let out the distress sirens of Alcatraz, indicating that grave trouble was happening at the prison. The sound could easily be heard from the shores of San Francisco. The Coast Guard and the Marines were mobilized with the support of a demolitions and weapons expert. And all off-duty correctional officers were brought in to help take back the cell house from the armed and desperate convicts. Fun fact, there's actually a telegram that was sent to Seattle for backup from the Marines here.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I do have a picture of it. I will include that in there, but you can see it's from the warden asking for help.
Wow, that's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they didn't know how long it was going to, they could hold out,
Yeah, because when we did the tour, there's still bullet chips in the concrete from it.
You can see tons of it. Since the takeover happened after lunch, the majority of prison inmates were in the Industries building, and the cell block was largely empty. Marines assisted correctional officers in assembling all of the industry workers in the rec yard and helped gather blankets and jackets for inmates who were unable to return to their cells. So they had to sleep outside in the cold, wet
San Francisco air.
Yes. And they just had to stay outside, and that's why they were gathering all the blankets and everything. Meanwhile, inside the cell block, the battle was raging. The escapees realized that they were unable to gain access to the rec yard and had become desperate. In a violent rage, cheered on by inmates, Shockley and Thompson. Oh, hold on, let me do that again. In a violent rage and cheered on by inmates Shockley and Thompson, Joseph Kretzer took his revolver and, leaning against the bars of cell 403, where the hostages were kept, he started unloading rounds into the cell. Officers fell in a hail of gunfire, some critically wounded. The warden called together his lieutenants and they formulated a plan to send in strike teams to rescue the guards that were held captive. Lieutenant Phil Bergen was assigned to lead the first team into the cell block through the West Gun Gallery. Fucking scary as shit. I can't even.
No.
As the team approached, 2 guards first fired several rounds to clear the corridor. The team rapidly made their entry into the gallery and ran upstairs to the first level. As one of the inmates fired rifle rounds at the assault team, Bergen worked quickly to rescue an officer that had been ambushed by Coy. Harold Stites was one member of Bergen's team who courageously returned fire, attempting to suppress the convicts' bombardment. As Bergen provided medical care to a downed officer, Stites continued to spray rifle fire into the cell house. Then suddenly, Stites was struck by a bullet and yelled out that he had been hit. 3 other officers were also hit by gunfire during this assault. Stites was carried unconscious out of the gun gallery and laid onto a sofa. He was quickly examined by the prison's physician and pronounced dead. The other officers were quickly transported by boat back to the mainland and was taken by ambulance to the local hospital. Bergen and 4 other officers returned to the gun gallery and communicated with the prison staff via one of the gallery phone lines. It appeared that an inmate was running from cell to cell, firing random shots in the gallery. A little after 10 p.m., the associate warden took a group of 14 officers and burst into the cell house, hoping to rescue their colleagues. The team fell under heavy gunfire from the inmates who had positioned themselves on the top of the C block, waiting to ambush. One of the officers was able to close the D block access door, but then was immediately struck in the shoulder by gunfire. The escapees realized that their chance of escaping was fading, and Shockley and Thompson retreated back to their cells and contemplated how to explain their involvement in the plan. Not knowing the origin of the gunfire, the Marines started bombing the D block with explosives. As the cell block filled with dense smoke, Coy, Kretzer, and Hubbard retreated to the utility door as the bombing continued. The Marines drilled holes in the ceiling, lowering hand grenades attached to wires, then detonating them. The concussions were fierce, and the prisoners in the D block hid behind a soaking wet mattress with very little protection. The barrage of gunfire, mortars, and tear gas was ceaseless. They just kept hammering them. Water from broken pipes started flowing from the tiers and flooding the D block. Robert Stroud, the Birdman of Alcatraz, made efforts to end the battle. At 56 years old, he climbed over the railing of the 3rd tier and lowered himself to the 2nd tier. Then he dropped onto the floor of the D block. In what seemed to be a valiant move, he started closing the front steel doors of all of the isolation cells, hoping to protect the helpless men. Stroud yelled up to Bergen, explaining that there were no firearms in the D block and that those involved had retreated to the other section of the prison. He made it clear that many innocent men would die if they continued to barrage them with gunfire. Which is incredible. He jumped down 2 floors to jump down and close the people in so they wouldn't get injured.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. And he was 56 at the time. And a horrific murderer. Look into him. Anyway, after 48 hours of battle, which is insane, the gunfire ceased. In the violent aftermath, Kretzer, Coy, and Hubbard were killed in the corridor from bullet wounds and shrapnel. The mastermind Coy was found dead wearing a guard uniform. One officer, William Miller, died of his injuries. A second officer, Harold Stites, was shot and killed during an attempt to regain control of the cell house. Thompson and Shockley were later executed together in a gas chamber at San Quentin for their role in the murder of Officer Miller. Carnes received an additional 99-year sentence. 14 guards in total were injured. It would take months before the cell blocks returned to any normalcy. And the scars on the cement and the cell walls would remain as strong reminders until the closure of the prison of the consequences of the attempted escape. Like we said, we still saw them when we were there just a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
My sources were history.com and alcatrazhistory.com.
I like, it's so crazy to me that even happened, that these people, I mean, but if you think about it, they're on this island, they're prisoners, they have no really repercussions because it's either stay there for the rest of your life or try to escape and do what they did.
I mean, that's really,
they were desperate men.
And the amount of like work that Bernard Coy put in, just 7 years of good behavior to earn his way into having that option to be loose and walking about without anybody watching him. It's just incredible. The fact that he starved himself, that he got really physically fit to be able to do this, that he was constantly reading to learn more and more and studying what was going on in the prison. It's just crazy.
It takes a lot of discipline, but at the same time, what else was he going to do?
I mean, totally. It's crazy. And Alcatraz was just, like I said, it was cold and wet and windy and kind of awful. I mean, that was the intention of it. Do you know what was an interesting fact though? Is I read that a lot of the prisoners said the food at Alcatraz was actually the best food they were ever fed in any prison.
I remember hearing that in the tour too.
Yeah, so they had like the best nutrition and really well-made meals, and they would have desserts, and it was just crazy when I was reading through all the things that they would have.
I remember hearing that.
Again, like I said, if you get a chance to go there, it is part of the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. And you can take a boat that brings you to the island. It is one of the best immersive like walking tours you've ever been on. So they give you headphones, but you can hear the sounds of the prison. You can hear people talking in the background, and you're led on the tour by actual prisoners that were kept in Alcatraz.
It was really cool. It was really cool.
Yeah, it was great.
And you could do it at your own pace because it was on they give you this headphone and like a recorder tape player thing.
Yeah, so you can stop
can pause it. You can you could literally take all day if you wanted to.
I mean, I feel like we could have done 2 days, honestly, because it's such a massive space.
And I want to go back. We didn't do that. There's a night tour. We didn't do that one. It was completely sold out. But I'd be very interested in doing the night tour.
Yeah, most definitely. I was like super impressed by that. And I had done it as a child, but I didn't really remember it. So it was really cool to go and walk through it. I felt like the shower area was so creepy.
Yes. And I have really good pictures of the shower area because it was so creepy. I was like, what the hell?
There were so many things. I mean, it's just so vast, and it's the different areas that you go to. Like I said, the industrial building where they did all of the prison work. There was the rec yard. There was multiple floors, administration buildings, and then the people that lived on the island. So there were children and families. And there was the warden's house, but then there was also
like schools.
Yeah,
there was a school there
because all the prison guards lived there with their families. Which is, I can't imagine growing up.
No, growing up on Alcatraz.
No, I saw in a documentary that there was like this woman that grew up there as a child, and they were told that you couldn't speak to the prisoners, but the prisoners could see them and talk to them, and they would try. It's just crazy. One of them said that they like dropped a ball or something that rolled towards the prisoners, and the prisoners like threw it back over the fence and like talked to them. And it was just like, oh my God, I can't even imagine.
No, I couldn't. And the warden's home was massive and grand, and they had parties there. And it's like,
oh yeah,
so mind blowing to think of that.
Yeah. It's just crazy. Anyway, that was my story of the Battle of Alcatraz. We're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, and then we'll be back with Autumn. and we are back. So this is just, I just am so excited about doing this one.
I am too, especially since I had this like deep pull to go to Alcatraz. I had never been there, and we planned our whole trip around being able to visit there.
Well, I feel like, well, it started with, it was Autumn's birthday, and she started out saying that she wanted to go to the Winchester Mystery House,
Mm-hmm.
which is also very fascinating.
So cool.
Mm-hmm. And so, but it's in San Jose. And I was just like, if we're going to go, I mean, it's not like it's a far trip, but if we're going to go and travel, then let's stay in San Francisco, rent a car, go to that one day, and then do all the San Francisco stuff, which was really fun.
Yeah, we went on
Also,
ghost tours. It was so fun.
yeah, ghost tours, murder tours. We did all of the things. And then Alcatraz was a huge highlight for both of us. I have family down there, so it was nice because we also got to visit with them, and it ended up being such a great trip and really fun time away. Anywho, let's get into your Alcatraz story.
Yes, mine isn't as intense as Aaron's. But, and I'm really still sad about Miller. He saved the day.
I know remember there was in one of the cells they had like a tribute to him and talked about his part in it.
Like, I'm really sad and bummed about that. He
I
did a
know.
really good job.
Right? I mean, he essentially saved everybody from them being able to get out and get to everyone else.
He truly did.
Yeah.
It could have been insane. It could have been historically different
Oh
if
yeah.
he didn't do what he did.
They could have been the only ones to have ever escaped Alcatraz. I mean, you know,
And it sounds like they would have done some damage.
I don't think they would have let any of those guards survive.
No, not a single one.
They were ruthless.
Okay, so mine is the inmate from Alcatraz, Harmon Metz Whaley. And I apologize if my voice cuts in and out. I'm going to do my best, guys.
That's it. I'm cutting you off.
Dang it.
Yeah. Fuck this shit. If you can't talk, you can't tell stories. Where's
I
my
know.
Cabernet?
Damn it. It's an all episode of just Aaron again.
You've been replaced.
I know. She's getting a big head, guys. I'm really worried.
I mean,
okay.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Harmon Metz Whaley, Alcatraz inmate number 248 AZ, was born on December 14th, 1910. Harmon was a well-known criminal who was a key figure of the famous Weyerhaeuser kidnapping. He was sentenced to 45 years and served on Alcatraz from 1935 until his transfer to McNeil Island in Washington State in 1957. He was 24 years old when he began his sentence on Alcatraz. He was released from prison in 1963 at 52 years old and had served a total of 22 years on Alcatraz.
Oh my God.
One of the longest terms on the island.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell the story about what put him there. In 1935, George Weyerhaeuser was the 9-year-old son of lumberman J.P. Weyerhaeuser of the Weyerhaeuser Company that is still in business today and worth $16.35 billion.
That's all?
That's it. Just some chunk change.
That's nothing.
Nothing. On Friday, May 24th, 1935, in Tacoma, Washington, George Weyerhaeuser was released from school for lunch a little earlier than usual. George walked to the nearby Annie Wright Seminary to meet up with his sister Anne. This was where the family chauffeur genuinely met the children to drive them home for lunch. He arrived at the seminary 10 to 15 minutes early, and being a 9-year-old impatient little boy, he decided to walk home rather than wait for the chauffeur to arrive.
Ugh.
Somewhere en route, George was kidnapped. Once George's family realized he was missing, they notified police immediately and began searching for him. That evening, a special delivery letter addressed to whom it may concern arrived at the Weyerhaeuser home. It listed a series of demands, which included a $200,000, which would be $4 million in today's money, an unmarked 20, 10, and $5 bills ransom in exchange for George, whose signature appeared on the back of the envelope that had arrived. They immediately notified the FBI.
Yeah, absolutely.
The family follows the kidnapper's instructions to place a personal advertisement signed Percy Minnie be placed in the Seattle Post-Intelligencer newspaper to indicate that the Weyerhaeuser family would comply with the kidnapper's demands. They placed similar advertisements on May 27th and May 29th. On May 29th, 1935, George's father received another letter instructing him to register at the Ambassador Hotel in Seattle, Washington, and wait for further contact. Included was a note from George himself stating that he was safe, which I can only imagine would make the family feel a little bit relieved.
Maybe a little bit relieved, but I feel like too, like the Lindbergh abduction happened just a few years prior, and I feel like I would be freaking the fuck out.
Yes, you're right. The Lindbergh was fresh on everybody's mind. 10 p.m. that night, a taxi cab driver delivered another letter to Mr. Weyerhaeuser at the hotel. The letter directed him to drive to a designated point where he found sticks in the ground with a white cloth attached.
What the fuck?
Very strange. There was a message directing him to another cloth further down the road. He travels down the road to the second location, but he finds no message. He waits for 2 hours before he returns to the hotel. And I could only I can only imagine like what is going through his mind at that point.
No, that's just heartbreaking.
You're waiting and you're like hoping that something's coming. And then you're
maybe they got held up or something, but whatever is going to
or you like misread something or missed a step, you're like going through everything in your head.
How awful.
The next morning, May 30th, an anonymous caller reached Mr. Weyerhaeuser and told him he was not happy with him for not following his instructions. Mr. Weyerhaeuser assured him that he did follow the instructions, and he had even waited for 2 hours at the location for further instructions before he had returned back to the hotel the night before. He insisted to the caller that he did want to cooperate, but that he just was not able to find the last note.
Yeah. That would make me so angry.
Yes, like he's like, hello, I was there. I waited 2 hours.
Yeah.
At 9:45 p.m. that night, a man with a European accent called George's father and gave him instructions to proceed to an address where he would find a note in a tin can. Once he arrived at the first tin can, there were instructions to follow to another point, and he continued to follow directions that he found at each point, like a scavenger hunt of sorts.
Yeah, how awful.
Right? Like, you're already like so upset.
Yeah.
Mr. Weyerhaeuser finds himself on a dirt road off a highway where he found a note telling him to wait 5 minutes with the dome light of his car still on. And then after 5 minutes was up, go to another white sign on the same road. Once he arrived at the white sign, he found a note telling him to abandon his car with the ransom money inside and start walking back in the direction of Seattle.
Oh my God.
Right? If the money was in order, George would be released unharmed within 30 hours.
That is so messed up.
I know. And could you imagine, like, you're just like, okay, I guess what now?
Yeah. Not to mention, I think I would be really worried that I would be like, if in that remote type of situation that they would just kill me and take the money.
Right.
You know?
Yes. Like, What's stopping them from killing both of you and taking the money and running?
Exactly.
Mr. Warehouser had only walked about 100 yards when he heard a noise coming from the bushes. He saw a man run out and get into his car and drive away with the ransom money. On the morning of June 1st, 1935, which is the morning after, George Warehouser was released at a shack near Issaquah, Washington. George recalled in detail the whole ordeal. When he left the seminary on May 24th to walk home instead of waiting for the family chauffeur, he took a shortcut through some tennis courts. As he was leaving the tennis courts, he met a man. He described him as around the age of 40 with brown hair and a mustache. The man asked him for directions, and as George was responding, the man picked him up and carried him to the sedan that was parked across the street. Once inside, George noticed that a second man was sitting in the front seat of the car. George was placed in the back seat and he was covered with a blanket. The men drove him around for over an hour, and he could hear the men having whispered conversations. After being driven around for a few hours, the men stopped the car on the side of the road and took the blanket off of George. George was handed an envelope and a pencil and told to write his name on the back. The men then blindfolded him and carried him about 10 to 12 steps. And George said it must have been across a stream because he heard rushing water. Once on the other side of the stream, they placed him on the ground and led him by the hand around for about an hour, which felt to him like about 3/4 of a mile.
Yeah.
George observed that the area was covered with bushes and trees because he would be brushed up against them frequently, and the ground was very uneven.
That's kind of amazing that he paid that much attention to detail when
Yes.
he was only 9.
This kid is incredible. Wait, there's more details that you're just like, what? A 9-year-old?
Yeah.
Finally, they arrived at a point by a large log, and the man who was leading him placed George into a large hole that had been dug in the ground. His blindfold had been removed at this point, and George estimated the hole was about 4 square feet.
That's so fucking creepy.
I know. And George said at this time they chained his right wrist to his right leg.
Oh my God. That's like a nightmare.
Mm-hmm. The kidnappers then placed a board over the hole, completely covering it. The men took turns guarding the hole that night until around 10 p.m., when one of them became paranoid that the police might find the hole. The kidnappers carried George back to the car and placed him in the trunk. They drove around for about an hour before they took him out and led through the woods yet again. Once they reached their destination, they dug another hole while George waited nearby next to a tree.
Jesus.
I know, poor kid. They placed George in the new hole and brought a seat for him to sit on and 2 blankets from the car.
Well, that's kind of nice, though.
I know. The hole was covered up with tar paper. There were lizards and spiders in the hole that could have really endangered George, but thankfully they did not. I would have not survived that.
We all know how I feel about spiders.
Yes. Ugh.
I
you
love
them, and I don't.
I have a tarantula and a jumping spider.
Yes, you do. The next day, on May 26th, the 2 kidnappers were joined by a woman, and they placed George in the trunk of a Ford and proceeded to drive through Washington State into Idaho. In the early morning, they took George out of the car and handcuffed him to a tree, where they guarded him until nightfall. They then brought him to a house and placed him in a large closet with a mattress, 2 chairs, and a small white table.
Where he would closet,
right? Where he would remain until the evening of Friday, May 31st. George was told they were leaving this location. There was a watch on the table, and George noticed that the time read 5:55 p.m.
Wow.
I know, like this kid is incredible. The kidnappers, who had been referring to each other as Bill and Harry, went upstairs, But George did not try to run away because the men had told him that he would be going home very soon. George was once again placed in the trunk of the car and taken to a little shack in Issaquah, Washington. About 3:30 a.m. the following morning, the kidnappers left the shack, telling him that his father would be there shortly and would take him home. George did not want to wait. He wandered into a farmhouse and told the family who he was and what had happened to him. The family took him in, washed him, gave him clean clothes, and drove him back home to Tacoma, Washington in their car.
That's amazing.
Isn't that amazing?
Also, I would not want to wait either. Fuck.
No, I'm not going to be like, first of all, I don't trust you.
No, they're probably digging another hole.
Right. Like, I'm sorry, bros. I'm out. I'm outro.
Yeah. Done.
The FBI's main goal was to ensure the safe return of George and took every precaution to ensure his safe return. They conducted the investigation quietly, and the serial numbers of the ransom bills were sent to FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. for tracking purposes.
That's awesome.
Immediately after the kidnappers took the money, the list of the serial numbers were sent to all of the bureaus and were distributed to commercial enterprises, which included bank, hotels, and railway companies. If they started to spend that money, the FBI would know. On June 2nd, 1935, the day after George was safely recovered, a $20 bill was used as payment to purchase a railway ticket from Huntington, Oregon to Salt Lake City, Utah. The FBI was able to determine that the purchaser was Harmon Metz Whaley. Many of the ransom bills started to appear in discount stores in Salt Lake City, but due to the limited number of special agents available in the area, police officers were placed in each downtown discount store, and each store was given a copy of the list of the serial numbers for the ransom bills. On June 8th, the excellent work by the FBI and police paid off when a police detective stationed at a Woolworth store was alerted by the cashier that a woman had just tried to use one of the ransom bills. The officer took the woman, who they identified as 19-year-old Margaret E. Whaley, the wife of Harmon Metz Whaley, to the FBI Salt Lake City FBI field office.
You know, it kind of blows my mind that a woman was part of this scheme.
Right? And she was 19.
Yeah. I mean, I shouldn't do that because I don't think that women are always naturally maternal, but it's just kind of weird to me that she'd be part of it.
Yes, I found it odd too. Once she arrived at the office, they discovered another ransom bill in her purse. She told them a number of conflicting stories, but finally they were able to obtain her correct home address. Later that day, the police arrived at the Whaley home to arrest Harmon Metz Whaley. He made several false statements, but eventually confessed to kidnapping George Weyerhaeuser and that he had an accomplice, William Daynard.
Bill.
He had met William at the Idaho State Penitentiary, because that's where you meet all your friends. Harmon told police that his wife had no knowledge of the kidnapping until they arrived in Spokane, Washington. However, that was a lie. She had been at the hideout house and helped negotiate the ransom. She was the woman that George had witnessed.
Yeah.
The Whaleys had burned about $3,700 of the ransom money in their stove, and the ashes were sent to the FBI lab in DC and were determined that a sufficient number of the bills remained, and they were able to positively identify them as the ransom bills. Why they burned them, I don't know. It's very bizarre.
I wonder if they knew, like if they had an inkling this might be something that they would be tracked by.
Yeah, I mean that is the only thing I could think of.
I mean, I'm sure they didn't publicize this, you know, that they were tracking the bills, but it was literally in every newspaper when the kidnapping happened, and then through to them being caught.
Right. No, you're right. So it's like maybe they
So
had like
maybe they felt the heat or something come
right. And I
in.
mean, this is only a few days after he was released. All this happened so
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah.
Harmon's story was that him and William had planned to split the money evenly between the two of them, but that William had cheated him out of $5,000. He also admitted to buying a Ford Roadster and registered it into the name of Herman von Metz.
Mm.
He told special agents that he had also buried $90,790 cash under a clump of trees and bushes, which they were able to recover
Oh,
on the
snap.
on June 11th. Harmon told special agents that William was to meet them at the home of his wife Margaret's parents. So the special agents made their way to the home, but upon arrival, her grandfather told them that a man fitting William's description had already come by asking for the couple, but that he had told them that he had already been by earlier to pick up their suitcases and had already returned to Salt Lake City and that they had been arrested.
Mm.
He said the man yelled, "My God, did they get everything they had?" and ran to his car and drove off.
Oh, wow.
He was probably thinking, oh my God, they took the money.
Oh, goodness. William.
I know. The FBI collected evidence in the hideout and the holes that the kidnappers had placed George into. And upon examination, the fingerprints were positively identified as Harmon
Oh,
and Williams.
that's impressive.
That's so impressive.
Yeah.
Their fingerprints were also found at the shack in Issaquah on the tin cans that contained the notes from Mr. Weyerhaeuser, and Harmon's wife Margaret's fingerprints were found at the hideout.
Good. So placing her there.
Yes, she was totally involved. It was a crime of opportunity, but also premeditated. The kidnappers had previously come up with a plan to take George when they read an obituary from John Philip Weyerhaeuser Sr., published the month before. They had been monitoring the family's movements over the last several days when George randomly appeared before them. He was an easy target for some easy cash. On June 19th, 1935, only 18 days after George had been recovered safely, a federal grand jury in Tacoma, Washington, returned an indictment charging Harmon Metz Whaley, Margaret E. Whaley, and William Daynard with kidnapping and conspiracy to kidnap. Harmon pled guilty on June 21st, 1935, and he was sentenced to 45 years for kidnapping and 2 years for conspiracy to kidnap. He was sent to McNeil Island in Washington, but was later transferred to Alcatraz. Margaret pled not guilty. Of course
She
did.
did.
Right. And went to trial in Tacoma, Washington on July 5th, 1935. 4 days later, she was sentenced to 2 20-year terms to be served concurrently and was sent to Milan, Michigan's detention farm.
Oh, that sounds awful.
I know. And also, this all happened so fast. They were caught and convicted.
Well, I think too, because of the Weyerhaeuser family, I'm sure they put like a speeder, like sped it up a little bit.
Right. And it helped that one of them confessed. I mean, Margaret's trial was a little longer because she did not.
But I just wonder though, like if they were like, oh, we're going to speed up this process because it's also being covered heavily by the media.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know if they just had like,
or maybe just the process
was, I was like, maybe
took a lot less time. Yeah.
William fled to Butte, Montana. And on June 9th, he was recognized by a police officer who tried to apprehend him, but was not successful.
Oh.
He eluded capture, and the police officer found $15,000 in ransom money in his abandoned car. He managed to escape capture until May 6th, 1936, about a year after the kidnapping.
That's crazy.
I know. Employees at 2 different LA banks reported that a man had exchanged altered bills. The man's ID had the name of Bert E. Cole and had an address listed. The FBI on the morning of May 7th, 1936, arrived at the address where later a man entered the car on the property and attempted to start it. It failed to start, and the man got out and popped the hood of the car. The agents approached him and they positively identified him as William Daynard, and he submitted to arrest without resistance. He had a 45 caliber Colt automatic pistol on his person
Jesus.
when they when they got him. So he was ready.
Yeah.
But he didn't
I mean, he'd been on the run for a year. That doesn't
yes.
surprise me that much.
No. William confessed to his participation in the kidnapping, and on May 9th, 1936, he pled guilty in the court and was sentenced to 2 concurrent 60-year prison terms for kidnapping and conspiracy to kidnap.
Dang.
I know he got harsher, probably because he fled.
It's because he fled for sure.
That same day, he was sent to the federal McNeil Island Penitentiary in Washington. He was later transferred to the federal Leavenworth Penitentiary in Kansas. There, the authorities determined that William was insane and recommended that he be transferred to a mental hospital.
Oh.
I don't know anything about him really, but that was like kind of shocking when I read that part.
Yeah.
The FBI was able to recover a total of $157,319.47 of the ransom money.
Wow.
Which is almost all of it.
Yeah, no, that's pretty great.
Harmon Whaley wrote to George Weyerhaeuser from prison several times, apologizing for his actions. This is going to blow your mind.
Okay.
When he was released on June 3rd, 1963, at the age of 52, George Weyerhaeuser found a job for Whaley at one of his organ plants.
What?
He hired him.
What the fuck? That is so crazy.
I know. George had said of Harmon that he was a young man in his 20s at the time that didn't mean him any harm. George eventually succeeded his father as the chairman of the Weyerhaeuser Company. George never appeared to have any PTSD or any effects from the kidnapping. He remained more concerned about how his parents suffered being away from him.
I'm sure. But that speaks a lot to George's character.
Right? Like he hired his kidnapper.
Yeah, that's incredible.
My sources were Wikipedia, Seattle PI, FBI.gov, and mynorthwest.com. Wow,
that was awesome.
It was really, honestly, one of the coolest stories.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I also, of course, we love when it's local to us. That's always nice.
Yes, there's like that little local connection.
Have you ever gone to like the Weyerhaeuser, like they have like some sort of camp thing? No. I went to it and you it's like for team building.
Was it in Federal Way? Because that's where their big one is based. Yeah, I kept reading about that.
I think so. I remember doing it with school. We went there.
Oh yeah, no, I've never been. I mean, we know who Weyerhaeuser is.
Yeah,
they're everywhere here, but
yeah,
I've never like done anything with them specifically.
Yeah. I mean, I also think like that time period, like we mentioned the Lindbergh kidnapping, and there were a lot of other kind of like kidnappings kind of similar to that around that time of children abductions or like heiresses or whatever. I do know about that time, the Boeing family was also very concerned and worried and about their kids being kidnapped as well, because, it was kind of like a trend.
Yeah, like ransom and stuff.
Yeah. Just, I mean, I feel like too, like there's not, for now, there's cameras everywhere and there's like tons more things to be able to track people and Amber Alerts and
security.
Yeah. So that it's very different, but I know a lot of those wealthy families became very nervous and, always had their kids with chaperones because they were concerned that it could happen to them too.
Totally. Which I feel like is valid.
Totally. Absolutely. Well, that was our big Alcatraz episode. We hope that you enjoyed it. We're going to, like I said, we'll put all of the pictures from a bunch of pictures from our trip, as well as pictures of from our pertaining to our cases. It was really exciting. I felt like this was really fun, and it's almost a little more exciting because we had such a hiatus where you and I weren't recording together.
Yes. And I am actually really impressed that my voice made it this long.
I know. I mean, you still sound, I can still hear you stuffed up, but
Yeah.
I'm glad you're on the mend.
I'm doing so much better.
And like I said, it's really nice to just come back with a special episode where we both stuck with a similar theme.
Yes. We obviously planned this one.
Yeah, we planned this one out. I think we will probably do something similar. Maybe, I don't know, quarterly. I'm just spitballing now.
I think that would be really fun.
But it'd be really fun to, keep doing things, a similar, like, themey sort of one. I don't know.
I like it.
Anyway, we hope you really enjoyed it. We hope you're also enjoying your birdies. Remember, if you don't know about She's Birdie, it is a personal alarm that you can buy. If you use our code NotMurder15, you get 15% off your purchase. I know so many people that have gotten them, and it's awesome because I just feel like we're contributing to keeping people safe until women don't have to be scared of fucking people attacking them in the night.
Yes. And I also my mom has been buying so many to give to all of her loved ones, and it's so cute.
Yeah, I just gave one to a friend for her birthday. It makes a great
gift. It's a great gift. Is. And they're not just for women, they're
for everyone.
Birdies for boys, birdie bros.
Yeah. And they have a lot of event, like, things that come up where they'll do like a special holiday edition. I know they do a Pride edition.
Yeah, my mom got the holiday Valentine's one.
Yeah,
they have really cute
pink design. But anyway, if you want one for every one of your outfits,
I mean, honestly, or like every one of your purses, or like one for your workout bag, one for your purse, like, and they make such great gifts. They really do.
I keep mine on my keychain at all times. I've had mine for several years, and it's awesome.
She forced me to get one, and I'm glad she did.
I did. And now it's awesome to be a spokesperson for that. Anyway, we so much appreciate all of you for listening. We're so happy to be back. We'll be back again with another episode next week. If you have any feedback, hopefully positive, you can email us at info@murdernotmurdering.com. You can also send us a DM on our Instagram. And again, keep a lookout for lots of pictures coming, specifically about Alcatraz.
Yes, you're going to love it.
Yes. So thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.